So my name's Elaine. I am a librarian with Burlingame Public Library. I'm really excited for this event today, and really just happy to partner with Aileen Cassinetto, who was our San Mateo County Poet Laureate, who approached us about doing these events, and she started mentioning names, and I was just like, oh my gosh. So I'm very excited to have this event here, and really grateful to Aileen for working with us on this. Again, we're here with Malaka Gharib, Erin Entrada Kelly, and Christina Newhard, and I'm so excited about this. And as usual, I want to thank our foundation for helping make things like this possible. And then again, a huge thank you to Aileen for organizing this event and several others around the peninsula, as well as 2 more for the library that are going to be in the coming weeks. I am here helping moderate the chat box, and Jennifer, you will also see, is our children's librarian. She will also be helping moderate. We'll do our best to try to get links in the box. So again, feel free to chat in there, hide the chat if you don't want, choose all panelists and attendees. If you have a question that you want to ask the speakers, make sure you use the Q&A function. That way it just avoids getting lost. I'm gonna pass things off to Aileen, who will introduce our amazing speakers. We'll do some conversation there, and then we'll go into a moderated Q&A, both with us. We've got some questions ready, but also for sure taking some questions from you all. So I am going to hand it over to Aileen.
Thank you, Elaine. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm one of your hosts, Aileen Cassinetto, and I wish to thank Burlingame Library for sponsoring this event, and Books Inc. and Archipelago Books for their support. I'm very proud to start off our virtual book fest with an event featuring 3 phenomenal authors from very diverse backgrounds. Friends, please welcome Malaka Gharib, Erin Entrada Kelly, and Christina Newhard. We're very honored to have them with us today. They will be reading excerpts from their recent books. And now, without further ado, I'm delighted to introduce Malaka Gharib, an artist, journalist, and writer based in Washington, D.C. She is the founder of the Runcible Spoon, a food zine, and the co-founder of the DC Art Book Fair. She is the deputy editor and digital strategist on NPR's Global Health and Development team, and the author of I Was Their American Dream, a graphic memoir about growing up as a first-generation Filipino Egyptian American. She lives in a row house with her husband, Darren, and her 9-year-old rice cooker. Welcome, Malaka, and congratulations on winning the 2020 Arab American Book Award.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Am I doing my reading now, or are we going through everybody's? Yes.
You're reading now.
Oh, I'm gonna read now. Okay, thank you so much. All right, I'm gonna share my screen. I'm gonna do something I've never done before. I'm gonna read a chapter of my book that I have not read to anybody. I usually read the high school chapter, but now I'm gonna read the college chapter of my book, just because I think it'll be fun to mix things up. All right, so I'm gonna have to, can you guys see my screen? Yes. Okay, I'm just gonna assume yes. All right, so here we go. I had to go to college in New York. This is me watching a TV show called Felicity. I applied to New York University, where I thought Felicity went. Dear NYU, I must attend this college. You see, there's this TV show. I didn't get in. Dear Malaka, no, love NYU. Turns out it didn't even matter because Felicity went to the fictional University of New York, and most of the show was shot in Los Angeles. Still, that's LA in the background. I didn't get into Columbia either. No, that's a guy on the show. Well, who was I kidding? My grades weren't high enough anyway. I did, however, get into Syracuse University, which was technically in New York, just 5 hours from the city by car. Min, I got in. Yes, yay! Close enough. We couldn't afford it, but I begged my mom to let me go there. Anyone goes to New York, Mom. I need to be there. Okay, we will find a way. She refinanced the house. Hi, I'd like to take money out of my mortgage, and asked my titos, titas, nanay, and tatay to pitch in with a little money. Actually, Mom was always like that. If Min or I wanted something, she just made it happen. Ma, I want to be a drummer in a band, no matter how dumb or crazy. Okay, I signed you up for drum lessons. Hell yes, Ma. but helping me to go to a stupidly expensive school on the other side of the country, it meant she trusted in my plans for the future. She believed in me. It was the greatest gift she could have ever given me, and there was nothing left to do but succeed. The conditions for going to Syracuse: get a work study, win as many scholarships as humanly possible, pay for my own student loans, and follow the pyramid of acceptable jobs. But I want to study art. No. Okay, fine. Creative writing? No. Okay, journalism. Okay, fine. Journalism? No. Here's a pyramid of acceptable jobs according to my Filipino family: a doctor on the top, then a nurse, then an engineer, then a lawyer, then an accountant, and then a business person. You won't make any money in journalism, they told me, so I studied marketing. Sophomore year, I secretly added journalism as a second major. Take that, Mom! One big reason they agreed to send me to Syracuse, which Tita Maro insisted was part of the Ivy League, haha, was because of the exposure. We're sending you to a white school so you can learn from them, eat like them, dress like them, act like them. Because when you get into the real world, that's how you have to be. That's Tita Maro right there. He's always giving these grand declarations. I was ready. Bring it on. Oh-eh-oh-ha, oh-eh-oh-ha, oh-eh-oh-ha. That's the Felicity theme song. Mommy, Nanay, Tita Pinky, and Min Min packed me a balikbayan box full of stuff I might need in college. A little Virgin Mary statue, Spam, little packets of instant microwavable rice, a mini rice cooker, canned cheese, papaya soap for my face, and hotel room slippers. Sardines packed in tomato sauce. I'm never gonna eat this. Syracuse was really different from Cerritos. That's where I was from. Everyone was mostly white. It's just like Felicity. In the dorms, I couldn't tell the girls apart. I thought they all looked the same. Sarah, Kat, Kim, Allie, Allie with a Y, Nikki, Erica, Sarah, Kate, Megan, Megan with an H, Kayla. Crap, Sarah or Megan. Hey there, hello fellow classmate. Hi Kate, do you have any thumbtacks? I'm Kim, Kate's shorter than me. Oh, sorry. I quickly realized I didn't know crap about white people. Just stuff that I saw on TV, read in magazines, and stuff that my parents and family told me. They don't take their shoes off in the house. They make you pay for your own food at dinner. They don't eat rice. Isn't that crazy? None of it seemed really useful. Everyone also seemed to know all the songs at the bar, except for me. Whoa, we're halfway there, sweet Caroline, and my brown-eyed girl. I don't know how that song goes even. I had to Google the lyrics. Reaching out, touching you, I mean me touching you, sweet Caroline. Good times never seem so good. I finally figured out the lyrics. I also seemed to save stuff that made people mad. Wow, you're so tall. Excuse me? You look tired. You have a pimple. I was just stating facts, but I learned that commenting about personal appearance was not cool, although very normal in Asian culture. Anyway, I was determined to follow Tita Mara's advice about trying to learn from white people. I started going to the gym. I was never athletic, but it seemed like all the girls liked using the elliptical and doing ab exercises. I tried to be more outgoing and confident. Hi, how are you? I am Malaka, like Monica with an L. Hi, I'm Courtney with a C. And I kissed a lot of white guys. Would you like to watch a movie tonight? Who's up for spin the bottle? Hey, I've been sexiled by my roommate. Can I crash in your bed tonight? And I tried to look more like them. My hanging in the quad look, a first-gen iPod loaded with U2 and classic rock, an ID card, the game day look, eating pizza, wearing Syracuse shirt, a frat party outfit, wearing a party top with lots of cleavage, and my business school outfit, which had a pastel-colored Oxford and a popped collar, which was very popular then. You can actually cut these out, and they really do fit on my doll, so I encourage you to do that if you have the book. I missed home. But, dude, do not even think about popping that collar. But that's what everyone does here. You sold out. Sometimes in the dining hall, I ate hot dogs with brown rice. Screw the bagel, let's have some Spam and rice, ha ha. I even ate it with a spoon and fork and smothered it in ketchup. Ugh, dry. The rice was nothing like the steamed white rice we had at home. And let's face it, hot dogs could never be a replacement for Spam, no matter how much ketchup you add. Yet I closed my eyes and pretended that I was eating big clouds of fluffy rice and munching on that salty, crispy rectangle of Spam. Ah, freaking out, freaking out. The most surprising thing about college was that nobody asked me the question that was so important in high school. What are you? I didn't anticipate how much I missed being asked. How else would I get the chance to tell them who I was, where I came from? Hi, I'm Michelle. I'm from New Jersey. What's your major? Hi, I'm Malaka. I'm from Cali. I'm studying marketing and journalism. Anything else you want to ask me? Sometimes I would initiate the question. Guess what I am? But they were always so off. Russian, Portuguese, Italian, Latina. I'm Egyptian and Filipino. Isn't that crazy? The response was always so lukewarm. That's crazy. Cool. Huh. Wow. How interesting. The worst was when people responded, I don't see color. It made me so mad. Didn't they want to know about the tinikling? Egyptian falafel, pancit, one of the most popular Filipino foods, Egypt, one of the 7 wonders of the world, the galabeya, what your name looks like in Arabic, my culture. I didn't realize then until then how much that stuff mattered to me. So here's me, I'm getting out the can of sardinas. I got the microwavable rice and I opened it. I microwaved my rice and I put the sardinas on top. I put, finally, some real food. Oh my God, what is that smell? It smells like fish blood. The end.
Thank you so much, Malaka. It's really so much more special when you hear the author reading from their own book. Your book is stunningly and smartly created, and one line that stood out for me, among many others, is, and I quote, in the beginning, you said, I had to somehow rise above my parents' life in America, which I know resonates with many second and even third generation Americans. So thank you. Thank you so much, Malcolm. Now, it is my pleasure to introduce New York Times best-selling author Erin Entrada Kelly, who was awarded the Newbery Medal for Hello Universe. She grew up in Lake Charles, Louisiana, and now lives in Delaware. She is a professor of children's literature in the graduate fiction and publishing programs at Rosemont College, where she earned her MFA. Her short fiction has been nominated for the Philippines Free Press Literary Award for Short Fiction and the Pushcart Prize. Erin Entrada Kelly's debut novel, Blackbird Fly, was a Kirkus Best Book, a School Library Journal Best Book, and an ALSE Notable Book, as well as an Asian Pacific American Literature Honor Book. She is also the author of The Land of Forgotten Girls, winner of the Asian Pacific American Award for Literature, You Go First, a Spring 2018 Indie Next Pick, Lalani of the Distant Sea, and We Dream of Space. The author's mother was the first in her family to immigrate to the United States from the Philippines, and she now lives in Cebu. Please welcome Erin Entrada Kelly.
Thank you. Thanks everyone for being here. That was amazing. So mine is definitely a different tone. So just warning you ahead of time. So I'm going to read from, this is Lalani of the Distant Sea. It came out in September and it's my first fantasy. And I wanted to read from this because it's very much inspired by Filipino folklore. And the section that I'm going to read is in the book. It's very much Lalani's story, the title character. But there's a part in the book where she is traveling with a creature called a Mendoran, who is kind of part water buffalo, part girl. And her name is Usoa. And Usoa asks Lalani to tell her a story. So I'm going to read to you the story that Lalani tells Usoa. Anya of Arkalai was cursed. It was clear from the moment she was born. She looked like no other infant in the village. Although Anya had 2 hands, 2 feet, 10 fingers, and 10 toes, she had an oddity that no one in Arkalai had ever seen, a small shell. It was on her back. It stretched from her waist to her neck, and there was nothing to be done. The leader of Archelaus told the villagers to avoid Anya at all costs or risk being cursed themselves. To make matters worse, the shell kept getting bigger. It grew just like her hair or her fingernails. By the time she was 13 years old, you could no longer see her back at all, just the shell, and it was heavy too. Anya grew weary from carrying all that weight, and her heart grew weary too because she had no friends. The other children didn't understand why she had this shell. It must have been something she'd done, they said. She must be wicked or diseased, they said. It was rumored that if you touched her shell, you would die, though this wasn't true. Even Anya's parents were ashamed of her. What had they done to deserve such an absurd child? Didn't they have enough to worry over? What do you think Anya's shell looked like? Don't think of it as anything beautiful. It was ragged and lumpy, and there were no brilliant shades of red, blue, or green. Think of the color of dust. Think of the bark of a dead tree. This was Anya's shell. Poor Anya. You can imagine how desperately she wished for her shell to disappear. Every night she fell asleep and wished for her burden to wither away and die. She prayed that she would wake up surrounded by broken pieces, free, but that never happened. Time did nothing to comfort Anya, but she never gave up hope that she would be like everyone else one day. She did everything she could to rid herself of that shell. She banged it against the biggest tree in the village. She begged a huntsman to hack it off. She tried to burn it even, but it was stubborn and sturdy and part of her, so nothing worked. By the time she was 20, Anya no longer believed in miracles, but then a miracle appeared. A traveler, a man named Zozi. The people of Archelaus had never seen a foreigner, especially one like Zozi. He told them he traveled the world and collected things along the way. One of the things he collected was knowledge, and he offered it to everyone, including Anya. He told her that he could remove her shell for a price, and she promised to give him everything she owned. It wasn't much. Her parents had died and left behind a small house, but she gladly offered it to Zozi. She said she would return to the village as a normal woman, and she would find a new home. Maybe a man would ask for her hand in marriage. Can you imagine? Zozi put her in a deep, deep sleep. When she awoke, Zozi was gone, but he had kept his promise. Her shell lay intact beside her. She looked like everyone else, even if she didn't understand her new body. She fell over when she walked, but soon, with practice, she carried herself like an everyday Archelaus woman. Her hair brushed the skin between her shoulder blades. It tickled and delighted her. How surprised the town would be. She imagined their faces, the men rushing to marry her, the women rushing to be her friend. Anya had nowhere to put her shell. Zozi was a man of his word. Every beam of her home was gone and sold. Only a charred pit remained, the place where the hearth had once been. Anya found a place to stow the shell so she could walk through Archelaus without it. She couldn't wait for everyone to see her, the real her. But when she arrived, the people of Archelaus did not greet her with hugs and hellos. They regarded her as they always did, faces full of shock and disgust. "What happened to your shell?" they asked, their mouths puckered in disapproval. "I had it removed," she replied. The villagers scurried away, frightened by this new Anya. She'd become even more foreign to them than before. Each person she met was afraid. The only thing she heard was, why did you remove your shell? And hidden underneath this was another clear, unspoken question. Why did you think you could be one of us? They threw her out of the village. It took 2 men to hoist her shell through the gate. They called her a freak, an animal without a herd. "I am a person, and I am here," cried Anya. She pounded her fists on the gates. Without her shell to weigh her down, she had more power than before. "I am here," she cried, "I am here." Only one person answered, a man with a heavy voice. "Not anymore," he yelled. Anya carried her shell to the next town. What else could she do? But the people there refused to open their gates. By the time she had reached the 4th town, her body was bruised and weak. She was hungry and thirsty. She still carried her shell. Why? She didn't know. What was the point? No one wanted it. The shell served no purpose. So she climbed a cliff and threw it off. She watched it plummet to the shore and crack in 3 pieces. And she'd never felt so triumphant or defiant in her life, as if the shell had its own mind and had dared her to conquer it, which she had. Anya stood on the cliff and thought of going over too. Instead, she left the broken shell behind and walked 10 miles to the next village. It looked much like all the others. She knocked lightly at the gates and asked to be let in. Did they have room for one more? She was lost and lonely and needed food and water. But this village was quite different. When the guard opened the gate, Anya saw the people here had shells. Her heart leaped. She could have wept with joy. My herd, she cried, finally I have found you. But the guard looked at her coldly and asked who she was and where she was from. She explained. She told him about the shell and Zozie. The man studied her from head to toe. If you're one of us, show me your shell. Then you may enter, he said. You can live a life of luxury and riches. All will welcome you. You will be loved and adored for everything you are, and you will never worry again. But first, you must show me the shell. Anya said, I threw it off a cliff, and it broke in 3 pieces. The man's face tightened with horror. Why would you do such a thing? The shell was part of you. It was meant to be revered and celebrated. The villagers ridiculed me. They would not accept me with the shell, Anya pleaded. Rather than adore your shell, you sought the love of those who ridiculed you. The man shook his head. This is a great tragedy. He closed the gate. He didn't slam it or kick it shut. He closed it quietly, which made it worse somehow. Anya no longer had the energy to cry or scream or fight. She had finally found the place where she belonged, and now she did not belong anywhere. She had nothing to protect her, no herd, no shell. I am here, she said, one last time to remind herself, but she no longer believed it. Much different energy. I should have prefaced it, by the way, with saying that her friend Usoa asked her to tell her a story that would make her cry. Thank you.
That is so beautiful. Thank you so much, Erin. I have to tell you that I also just read your most recent book, We Dream of Space. And I just love your illustrations. I didn't know that you are a visual artist as well. And I love that it is evocative of 1980s pop culture and space exploration, and how you thoughtfully tackled uncertainties and hopes in the characters' interior and exterior world. So I love it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Erin. Our final panelist for today is none other than Christina Newhard, an author, visual designer, and founder of Sari Sari Storybooks. Christina is an independent publisher who focuses on underrepresented languages of the Philippines. She currently offers bilingual children's picture books in English, Cebuano, Chavacano, Ivatan, and Waray. Even if you don't speak these languages, the stories alone are wonderful and cover topics like bullying, differences, and shyness. Christina is biracial, born and raised in the Philippines, and moved to the USA as a child. Welcome, Christina Newhard.
Thank you for having me and for organizing Aileen and Burlington Library. So I'm going to do something a little different. I'm just going to read summaries of the stories, and I wanted to share some of the process behind making the illustrations, working with the illustrators. So I'm going to do a screen share and take a look at behind making the books. So this is the set of the 4 stories, and I'll start with Mello. So Mello is a story of a painfully shy little boy living with his grandmother and uncle. One day he visits a magical, busy city on the bottom of the ocean, filled with talking sea creatures. Disaster strikes the city, and he must overcome his shyness to help the sea creatures rebuild. So the story has themes of finding your leadership by helping others, migration and return, and something kids relate to, overcoming your shyness. These are my collaborators on the story: Elisa Sarmiento Co, my co-author, JP Cortez, the illustrator. And I'm really going to focus mostly on these books on the illustrators and their beautiful art. But a little bit about the book development, because I was very conscious that neither Elisa nor I are Ivatan. So we did want to take the time to connect with the Ivatan community and collaborate with them and launch the book there, and especially read to the kids the story and make sure that they liked it, that they laughed at it, that they that it made sense in that cultural context. So these are some of the people that Elisa had interviewed. She spent a week in Batanes talking to teachers and kids. I talked to an Yucatan American from LA named Darren, who's working on a project to record oral history. And this was one device we used for this particular book. I didn't do it for all of them, but Elisa dumped her research into a word cloud, and you can see like the biggest word here is elders. This is workshopping with the kids. You can't see the pictures, but they all were really attracted to the octopus in the story. And yeah, it was just really fun to see them engage with the book and see that they, the themes were really speaking to them. So this is a JP Portez's art. So JP is a fine artist. He's not really an illustrator. And for me as a publisher, I didn't look at this and think, oh yeah, this is great for a kid's book. It's very detailed. But what I really loved about JP's work is that he had a very strong voice. He has his own style. It's very intricate. And this is very unique to him. And so I was curious to work with him and see how he would apply this into this book format. So it's a little bit of a journey we went on together. So this is how her very first sketches of interpreting Mello and how to represent this shy little boy. So he was playing with like him hiding under a scarf or behind a leaf. And we ended up gravitating to the yuvuk, the woven basket. So the character in the book kind of has this basket on his head for a lot of it. JP is just so intricate, and I think his work is so beautiful. So these were his character sketches, and they're very detailed, right? And back to that theme of elders being very important. This is the grandmother, Papa Lucia, and Kananarang, the sea turtle, who are important to Mello, and they're both old. But that's sort of one way in which, you know, doing that research like shows up in the art later. And this is JP's process of, it was almost like he would redraw each piece. Illustrators have different ways of working. This ended up being like the finished art. So you can see it's not an exact match for layout, but more like working out the concept each time is the way that he went about it. And you can see the text at the bottom. And then this is the final art with cover and some of the spreads. And yeah, you can see the thread between like what his painting style is and this children's book version. So onto Kalipay and the Tiniest Tick Tick. I was really lucky to work with a really dope design studio, Happy Garaje. Daydreaming comes easily to Kalipay, but she doesn't know how to make bullies leave her alone. One day she makes an unusual new friend in Gamay, who tells the school bully, Juan, to stop teasing Kalipay. Other children are afraid of Gamay, her strange tongue, split body, and bat wings. But Kalipay is fascinated by the things that make her new friend different. Together they learn how friendship can overcome differences and create happiness for everyone. So there's themes of being different, being an outsider, also what makes somebody happy. And I think social inclusion, acceptance. As much as I could, I tried to find illustrators from the regions, and I really wanted to work with someone from Cebu. And this is just a sampling of some of Happy Garaje's work. They're a full design studio. They've designed sets for Disney. There's a t-shirt design for Uniqlo at the top right. And they have like a big range of styles. I knew they were really talented, but you know, the thought in my head was, I have to take this and end up with this for this story. And in looking at their work, you know, and looking at illustrators and trying to see who might be a good match, these pieces really stuck out to me, especially the little girl on the bus. And I thought that piece really said friendship and tenderness and whimsy. And I thought, wow, you know, they'd be a really great fit. So like JP, you know, this is pretty standard process. You start with character sketches. And the character sketches they gave me came with a lot of description. And these all came with description, but I just silhouetted them out for here. So these are working out character sketches for for the other characters in the story, and you can see Kalipay in like her regular dress and her Catholic schoolgirl uniform. And then Happy Garaje is very painterly in the way that they work. So these were the layout sketches, which don't have a lot of detail, and it was quite a big jump from this to the final product. And when I saw these, I really wasn't sure exactly how to read them. There was some description there, but I just show this to say illustrators have very different ways of working. And these guys are so good. This is what we ended up with. We went from this to this. And their work is really, I think, like each spread is like a painting. So going from this to that. And this to that. And this, you know, with just, this house will be on a tree to that. So the story, Amina and the City of Flowers, is illustrated by Robbie on the left, and Flor is the translator, and she had a lot to do also with the story development, in that she interviewed people from Zamboanga. She's from there and speaks like 4 languages, so she could really get an in-depth interview with different people, and that helped pull themes for the story. So this story is about Amina, a young Yakan weaver, who's homesick for Basilan, but she finds inspiration for her loom in the diversity and color of her new home, Zamboanga City. And I'll add, Flor also is from Basilan, so it's interesting. She has the same background as the main character, though she's not Yakan. But. So in looking for an illustrator, this is some pieces from Robbie's portfolio. He has this very modern, fresh, colorful style. He's very detailed. He has a lot of fun with characters. He has the 2 at the top are from this Geek series he does. And this book my book has a lot of different types of people from different backgrounds. And I like the way he approached character. And then I also know he was on a Philippine reality TV travel show and was really into going around the Philippines. And so the other thing I knew about Robbie was that he had a real appreciation and love for learning about other Philippine cultures. And this whole package together, and thinking of the colors of Yakan weaving, those were the things that made me think as an art director, he'd be a great fit for this story. He wanted to go to Zamboanga and wasn't able to, so in lieu of that, this was the way we went about researching, was looking at resources online. We found this floating school in Zamboanga, put out by the Cartwheel Foundation, so that made its way into the story. And just this and more for visual references, or what Robbie worked with. And he was really inspired by the geometry of Yakan weaving, which is very complicated and has a lot of shapes. And it was that concept that actually made him think about his characters in that way, to really make them kind of Lego-like and shape-based. So not copying that pattern, but just the concept of it inspiring him visually. Robbie also works as a UX designer, so everyone has different styles. He's very precise, and what he would show me is almost exactly what I would end up with for layout. So this is his storyboarding. You can see different types of covers on the left. And this is his process for first laying down the sketch for the spread, doing a color wash to get a feel for color balance, and finished product, which has a lot of detail. Again, sketch, color wash, and finished spread. Color wash, and finished spread. And then the last story is Sandangao, which is written by a poet and language advocate, Voltaire Oislan from Tacloban. And that's Ray Sunga, that's what he looks like, the illustrator. So this story is sort of a Tom Thumb story. It's about a little boy the size of a hand. Little Sandangao might just be a handspan tall, but he wants to do all the things that bigger children do. If only his family weren't so afraid he'd be blown away, dragged, or stepped on. When the village magic woman tells him to visit the eagle of Mount Danglai for help, Sandangao learns what it takes to grow. So Voltaire has this very like funny, dry, absurdist sensibility, and there's a lot of like scale in the story. And when I ran across Ray's work, like number one, Ray actually has done a lot of kids' books. So I just knew he knew very well what the process was for going through that. And I liked his, not that this was exactly the style I wanted, but just that he had a sense for absurdity and playing with angles. And he has a lot of different styles in his portfolio, but just more like what I was seeing made me think he would be a good fit. So these are some of his character sketches, thumbnails. And it's just one example of like our conversation. He showed me this is the opening spread. My feedback was, I think it's something else too small. We need a point of focus. So he zoomed in. And then this is where he got to like a layout stage. And unlike the other illustrators, he actually wanted to place the copy next to the art, which not everybody wants to do, but that worked for him. And the final spread. His layout, final spread, layout, and final spread. So that's it.
Thank you so much, Christina. You've produced some of the most gorgeously designed children's books. Filipinos are known to be regionalistic and with very different languages and traditions. But like Malaka and Erin, your books amplify our commonalities and such as and core values such as community and tolerance, which are lessons that are especially important now. So thank you so much, Christina. Thank you again, Malaka and Erin. It is such an honor to have all three of you with us today. And back to you, Elaine.
Yes, thank you. That was amazing. I was laughing, I was clapping, you couldn't see it. In the chats, people have really appreciated seeing the process. I'm also going to note that, you know, there were some great comments, like somebody commented on Facebook to Malaka that they went through similar situations coming from Mexico City to study at LA City College. And, you know, there was just definitely a lot of love, I think, for the stories that you all tell, the way that you tell them. And it is really interesting just seeing all these different aspects of getting to that point too. So I do have some questions ready, and then as a reminder, anybody who wants to ask a question, feel free to include it in the Q&A at the bottom of your screen. And go ahead and enter it in there and we will see it and we can definitely read those out. But yeah, if definitely for the speakers, if you didn't get a chance to look at the chat, I hope you can. I will try to save it too, because there's a lot of love in there. Okay, so let me get myself to some questions. And thank you, Aileen, for all your comments as well. So I'll start kind of basic and broad, and this is for all of you. You know, how did you start writing, and also cartooning and designing and, you know, all these different things that go into your books? I'm curious to know, you know, how you all started doing that and getting to that place. Yeah, let's just start real basic. And I'll say Malaka or Christina, you know, whoever wants to go first.
Sure, yeah, I'm happy to go first. You know, when I was younger, I was a big diary writer, and I don't know why, but I would draw a lot of my myself in the situations that happened during the day, in addition to just like writing in the diary, and that ended up being like always drawing and writing side by side. That ended up making me I guess like a natural cartoonist. Like how I choose to express myself is through like a drawn version of me. Just like for Aileen, it's like expressing yourself through poetry. For me, it's like I want you to see how I spaz when I'm like really pissed off, or like, you know, I feel like the cartoon version of me is like expressing how I really feel. So that just sort of extended into my storytelling. I also was surprised when I decided that the most natural thing for me was to create a comic version of my memoir, because I don't know, when it really came down to it, that's how I wanted to express it. So yeah, I started with journaling and drawing side by side. But I also discovered the zine community, the zine and comics community. I always felt like a bit of an outsider, but when I discovered comics and zines when I was in high school, I felt like there was this whole community of people who wanted to create books, their own comics and books, and like sell them to other people. And I thought it was just a great community to be a part of and grow from.
Awesome. Yeah. And I was actually curious about your I guess involvement with zines, and I believe you started the DC Zine Fest. Is that correct?
Yeah, the art book fair. Yeah. So basically, if you're not familiar with a zine, it's just basically like a DIY mini book or magazine or like comic book or art book that you create. Anyone can make a zine. It's very easy to make. And yeah, I wanted to place, DC is known for politics, right? Not really known for its art scene. And so when I moved here, I wanted to create the things that made me feel like I was at home, and home for me is Los Angeles. So one thing that DC definitely could use more of is more like a larger art scene. So I created that, and through that, I made a lot of art friends, which is great.
Awesome. All right, Christina or Erin?
Oh, I was always writing and drawing as a kid, and super into books also. Yeah, I don't know. That's it.
You liked it, started doing it,
liked it,
and then you did it well.
It's kind of the same for me too. I think, for me, I was a kind of the stereotypical book nerd. I was very quiet. I was very introverted. I was, kind of a, not to bring the party down or anything, but I was a pretty lonely kid. I was living in a community that was, at the time, 49% white, 49% African American, and the other, I think 2% was just other. So you can imagine, of that other, how many were Filipino or even Asian. So I was the only one in my school who had like a parent from another country, or who was not, one or the other. And so people were constantly asking that question, what are you? And when you're a kid who is already self-conscious and kind of sad and feeling down on herself, when people are asking, all I wanted to do was look like everyone else, So for me, books were a way to escape, and writing was a way to escape, because I thought, okay, if I have paper, I can write anything I want. I can make any world that I want, because I don't always like the one that I'm living in. So I started writing when I was really young, and I actually have this is like one of my this when I was 8, and this is like a rip off of Sweet Valley High. So these are like twins, but I gave them brown hair. All the characters I wrote when I was growing up were always white, of course, because that's all I saw in books, and they lived in California, and they were cheerleaders or whatever. And this is another one, So for me, it was very much an escape, and kind of like a soft security blanket that I would, wrap around my shoulders. That's what books were for me. And being able to write my own books was just like another layer of that.
That's awesome. And it kind of leads into my next question, and also really just the crux of a lot of what you have written about or talked about is, how your backgrounds have shaped what you write. And you mentioned the what are you question. Malaka obviously brings that up too. I think many people who are not white do experience this. So, I wanted to see kind of, how has your background really influenced what you're writing about? And I also, and something that I think always comes up for me is, it's so exciting to see that representation, to get that experience, those shared experiences out there. And then on the other side is, you kind of do want to be Sweet Valley High and just Asian, or, you know, not white. You kind of just want that to be your story. So, you know, what parts of you are, you know, putting that into your writing and work, and what is really strongly influenced, or, you know, comes from that desire to have that representation and that shared experience available for people. And I'm sorry if that was like a muddle of stuff.
Try to answer that question. I mean, for me, when I was writing I Was Their American Dream, I wasn't really writing for anybody but myself. What happened was that Donald Trump was elected for president in 2016, and I had grown up my whole life thinking that, like, America was cool with immigrants. I mean, I grew up in Cerritos, California, which is like one of the most diverse cities in the whole entire country. And I went to a school with mostly Filipino kids. I went to school with a lot of Korean and Hispanic kids, more Filipinos. And I just lived my whole life thinking that, like, everybody was cool with immigrants. I didn't think anything of it until 2016. Then I realized, like, oh, holy crap, like, there's a huge problem here. I mean, people, the rhetoric around it is not great. And it sort of it was like this moment where I was in a movie where it's like I started to have like a flashback of like every moment in my life where I was like, holy crap, like I just never thought about race critically, my own race critically. So like I want to take a moment to stop and reflect about everything that, like, look at my life through a race lens, which I just never considered doing before. And for me personally, the journey of like recounting my whole life through that lens helped me learn a lot of stuff that I don't really love. Like, there was so much white worship when I was growing up that I didn't, because of like what I saw on TV. Like, I spent so much of my time at Syracuse trying to like minimize like my brownness and like try to assimilate. Later on, I married a white guy. Like, I was like, what, did I only do that because like I like white guys in high school? I mean, like, you start to like have this sort of like, like, what is happening? But I wrote that so I could figure out for myself like what was happening. So yeah, I wasn't really thinking about other people. I was just trying to really work out my own narrative. But I hope that other people can relate to it. I think they do.
And for me, I think, you know, I kind of had like the opposite experience, right? I grew up in a fairly homogenous Southern community. And so I was constantly being told, you know, and I was this kid who I was not proud, you know, of, oh, I am half Filipino and I am proud. I was very much like, I want to have blue eyes. I want to have blonde hair. I want to look like the all-American girl, whatever that is. So I constantly allowed other people to inform me of my own worth, you know? And so if people were telling me that I was ugly, or if people were doing slanty eyes, if people were saying I was Chinese, if people were constantly asking me what I was and making fun of how I looked, or the foods that I ate, or my mother's accent, all this stuff, instead of me saying, okay, those people are not worth my time or energy, I think like a lot of young people, I allowed that to inform how I viewed myself. And of course, the conclusion I came to was not positive, because there was no positive, I was getting no positive information about who I was, you know, and the books didn't tell me, and the TVs didn't tell me, and the, you know, I just wasn't getting that. Not even just being biracial or being Filipino, but even just seeing immigrant families, like in any media. I mean, anything. You know, I would just hold on to anything. If there was a character with dark hair, I was like, oh, there's a character with dark hair. And, you know, it has nothing to do with necessarily ethnicity. But so for me, when I wrote Blackbird Fly, I was thinking about, you know, I wanted to tell the young 12-year-old Erin, who went through so much pain and anguish and was made fun of and all this stuff. I wanted to be able to tell those kids out there, you know, that who are experiencing that. Like, basically, I see you, you're not alone, and other people have felt the way you do, and here's how this character, who's basically me, navigated through it. And what was interesting is after the book came out, there were people who said, this is just so unrealistic that she would be the only Asian in her whole entire school. And I thought, clearly that person is living in a bubble somewhere, not in the South Louisiana, in the deep South, okay? So that's really what motivates all my books in some way. I'm always writing for that lonely kid out there who feels invisible. And I want them to know that they're not invisible and that I see them. So that's kind of what motivates every book I write.
That's awesome. And it's so interesting to see the differences of where y'all are coming from. You know, like, especially, you know, we're in the Bay Area. Growing up in the Bay Area, I think it's also very easy to think that the rest of the country maybe looks like it does here. So it's definitely interesting then to also think about like all the different things that really aren't okay to say to people that have been said to you. And again, you know, in the chat, people are like, yes, have the same experience. You know, Melissa writes that she grew up in Iowa. Definitely possible to be the only Asian person in the school. Christina, did you have anything to add?
For me, the impulse to create was really like the design part and not the writing part. Like the writing came after I wanted to, after like creating the structure to publish the stories and doing the research. That impulse came out of just, you know, over time having that sense again and again of like the way people would talk about the Philippines or misunderstand it, or, you know, how many times are you like, you meet someone, you say you're Filipino and they like, oh, Imelda Marcos's shoes, or something super like flattening. And I just felt this like huge lack of understanding. And so as a designer, I wanted to make these books and sort of like solve that problem, so to speak. But, and it was also like an excuse to go back. It was a way to get myself to go back to the Philippines and spend time there. Yeah. I didn't think of it till later, but much later after starting the project. But my mom was also someone who did a lot of writing, and she got a degree in journalism. So I don't know, in some way, like having that around as an influence, as a, you know, she was always like supporting my reading and encouraging that. Yeah, maybe subconsciously it's also a connection to that.
Awesome. I want to quickly bring in a question from a young fan for Ms. Erin. Of all your characters, which one is your favorite and why?
Oh boy, that is a tough question because it kind of changes. So Apple in Blackbird Flies is the most like me. She's not necessarily my favorite, maybe because of that. But I do really love Lalani here, and I'll tell you why. Because so Lalani is very she's not extraordinary in any way. She's not like the smartest or the most beautiful or the cleverest or the bravest. She's just a girl with tremendous compassion. And one of the reasons why I wrote this, I was writing We Dream of Space, my book that came out in May, and after the election, I stopped, and I was so full of like all these feelings, and I decided to write this book to talk about the power of ordinary people doing extraordinary things. And I also wanted to have a character who isn't your typical heroine going on an adventure, because when I was growing up, as I said, I was quiet, I was introverted, I was not brave. I didn't see myself as brave. I was super sensitive. Like I accidentally killed a housefly and I gave it a funeral. Like this is the kind of sensitivity that I like did a prayer. I cried. I covered it with a washcloth. It was a whole thing. And I tried not to ever kill bugs when I was walking. You know, I was very like an open wound all the time. And I wanted to create a character like that who gets to go on an adventure because I mean, the characters like that don't typically go out and brave the world because everything's scary. So for that reason, I think Lalani is one of my favorites as well.
Great, thank you. And I mean, y'all kind of covered this already, but one thing I was thinking about is, you know, I'm sure you do get people who say, you know, how much reading these characters means to them, or reading about people, you know, like them or seeing themselves represented means something to you. Like Erin was saying, like the Yellow Ranger was my girl, right? Because that was the one, it was the one that you know, I saw growing up. So, you know, and I'm kind of curious what really writing these stories and these books has meant to you.
I think for me, I realized, I too, like Erin, realized how very lonely I was as a Filipino Egyptian in a part of the country where there were a lot of diversity, but there was also very segregated by ethnicity, and also people were, you know, if you were not full Filipino, like you might not be accepted in the Filipino group, which is something that happened to me over and over and over again. My middle school bullies would speak Tagalog and talk shit about me, and I totally understood what they were saying because they just, even though I told them repeatedly that I was Filipino, I mean, I don't know, it just didn't register because I looked other, you know? And I think that what started off really writing a book about me ended up being something that I didn't realize would be so relatable for so many people. It's not just, I've heard an overwhelming amount of people have written in and told me, you know, I'm Mexican American, or like I'm Nigerian American, I'm like, you know, whatever ethnicity you are, American, and I completely relate to your story. And that actually helped me feel less lonely in my experience. I thought that I was the only one in the world who had this story, but I was comforted by hearing that I wasn't at all. And it almost was like closing a chapter on that book. It was like finishing a diary and closing the chapter to that book. And it was a tremendous feeling. And I'm so grateful for anyone who's, you know, reached out and said how much the book has meant to them.
And I want to echo that, because I think that really, you know, kind of underscores something that I just love about books and how they make especially young people more empathetic, because there is a universality to feeling othered. It doesn't matter where, you know, you could be of any, we all know what it feels like to not be included, to want to be included, to want to be seen for who you are. I mean, we all absolutely feel that. And I remember my very first reading before I had published my book. I was publishing short stories, and I did a reading in New York. And I was really worried because the short story was about a Filipino girl who hates the way she looks. So she prays to the Virgin Mary to give her blue eyes and this whole thing. And I was worried because I thought, well, this is where I'm in New York and the place is packed with Filipinos, right? And I thought, you know, maybe, I mean, it seems kind of silly now to think this, but I thought, I don't know if it's going to resonate in the same way, because I grew up in a community where there were 0 Filipinos, you know. So I read the story, and afterwards, you know, all these people are coming up to me and they said, you know, I felt the same way. And here they are in New York City, you know, so it just reminds you that no matter where you're from, we all kind of know what that's like. So, you know, whenever I get letters or emails or little fan art or whatever from readers, they're from all different backgrounds, which is just really cool, because that's what it's about, right?
And they're asking in the chat, Erin, where that story was published, because they want to read it.
That's, you know what, a lot of my short stories are no longer available because all the literary magazines disappear.
Oh no.
I know, but
It's gotta be digitized
yes.
and archived somewhere.
It is not. It was in Story Philippines. It's now defunct, so it's I mean, it's sad, but yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah, somebody's saying republish them. Yeah, do it.
I should put them together into something one day. Yeah.
Awesome. Let's see. Sorry, let me see here. I want to make sure. So we did have some questions in the Q&A, and the authors responded, but I still want to call them out. So there was a question for Christina that said, in your experience of being and working in the varied linguistic landscape of the Philippines, what are your thoughts about the language of English and its utility and prominence in the US. And so there's definitely kind of that discussion of the lack of bilingual really teachings here. But Christina, I don't know if you wanted to add anything to your answer.
No, not really, just that it's a shame that we're monolingual in the US and it doesn't need to be that way.
Mm-hmm.
I think a quick solution would be to have everyone learn Spanish, since that's the most common second language, but yeah.
And Christina, I have a question for you in that, you know, you chose to basically start up a press, you know, to publish your books. And was that partly just you wanted to take it into your own hands and have control, or was it also kind of seeing the lacking or inability in our current with publishers right now?
I think I was just being really realistic, you know, like the way that I was thinking of it and my own attachment to the structure of it all. Like, that's not how you would pitch a publisher. And I just was doing the math of like, who would I even pitch to publish these stories in this way? Yeah, so I just thought I'll save myself time and just go this path.
Okay. And so just a couple more questions, if that's okay. So one is whether y'all have advice for those who are seeking to represent their own voices and get their voices out there.
I have some advice. I think that people, you know, you don't really have to wait for any special time to do it. You can just go ahead and do it. And, you know, there's so many, I worked in the independent zines and comics community for so many years before I landed a book deal. I was probably making comics, I don't know, and zines since I was 15, like selling them, giving them away to people. It doesn't, you know, it just make it and then like put it out there and good things will happen, you know. It'll also get you in the practice of not being too precious about like making sure that every little last sentence is perfect and making sure that, like, you know, the drawings are perfect. It really doesn't have to be perfect. Just get the idea, put it out there, and you're good, and keep making stuff, keep hustling. I actually find social media to be a really good place for sharing, like if you do poetry, like sharing poetry or comics or your little writings, post a picture of it and mix it in with all your other pictures and stuff, and you'll start having a natural audience. People love that stuff. So use what's around you.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Can I ask a question of Malaka and Erin?
Sure.
Yeah, so actually related, you both have really great Twitter presences, and yeah, I was just going to ask how you think about that. I feel like it's very natural, and so it's really interesting that it's just very organic, like sharing your work on Twitter. But yeah, I really enjoy seeing your threads and just wanted to know how you think about that.
That's a great question. And I get that question a lot because I think writers particularly feel like they need to have a social media presence. And I always say, if you enjoy it, so like, I really enjoy Twitter, you know, it has its faults, of course, but I love to interact with readers, and I love to, it's just a great way to have dialogue with people that you otherwise would not be able to. And so it kind of like comes naturally as a platform to me, but that's not true for everyone, which is totally okay. So I always tell writers, you know, put your energy toward the things that you enjoy, and it'll come back to reward you. So things that I don't enjoy, for example, is I don't enjoy swag. Like, you know, a lot of writers will do a lot of swag. They'll do postcards, bookmarks, buttons, and I don't enjoy that part of it. I mean, if my publisher does it, of course, I'll take it, but doing it on my own is not something I enjoy. I enjoy, obviously, writing, and I enjoy social media and doing events and teaching. So that's where I put my energy. And I think Twitter is definitely one of those things where if you're not engaging with it, that's another thing, because it takes a lot of time to build a presence. And if you're not engaging with Twitter, it's really not doing anything for you, you know, to have dialogue with people. And that takes time. So if it's something you don't enjoy doing, then you'll be putting a lot of time towards something you don't even enjoy, if that makes sense. So I think for me, because I enjoy social media, Instagram and Twitter, obviously it's helpful, you know, and then you get to like meet people. I've met so many people on there, and people come up and they're like, oh, I know you from Twitter, and I recognize them, and it's really cool. But for some people that kind of freaks them out, which I get. So I don't know.
I think that's great advice. I don't have anything to add. I use it kind of like as like a very large extended friend platform. Like, so when I like said I was moving to Nashville, I just posted it on Twitter, and like I actually made like I'm having this like meetup with like 5 of the people who I met on Twitter. You know, I don't know. Just think of it like, if you just think of it as like an extended network where you're sharing stuff that you like, and like you're reading about stuff that you like, things will happen just like in the real world.
I like that y'all brought that up, because I think a lot of times social media is looked down on, but it can also be a place where you amplify your own voice. And I think we've seen a lot of voices that are amplified more because social media exists. And it is a way to get your work out there, and also really a way, like if you curate your feed so that it's all people who inspire you and people who you might make connections with, but and of course friends, you know, especially in the art and zine community, it does seem like a really great place to actually meet people and learn about that.
Yeah, and Twitter has done so much to amplify marginalized voices, you know, more so than virtually any other platform I can even think of. So I appreciate it for that reason too.
Yeah, Filipino Twitter is like an amazing, uplifting place. If you need people to start out, just follow EJ David Ramos, and like all the, like you'll start getting engaged, because the conversations that are taking place on his social media are always so fascinating.
That's awesome. And then let's see, I was wondering if y'all had any tips for creating the graphic novels or illustrated books and picture books.
Christina, do you want to answer that first, since you work with so many illustrators?
Yeah, so I can't speak to being an illustrator, but if you're doing kids work, there's the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators that is an amazing and friendly resource. They have a couple conventions, and I've found them to be very helpful. Other than just, I think kind of picking up on what Malaka said, is just do what you do and keep moving forward from wherever you are. Don't be discouraged, and we all grow. So don't get caught up in like, it should be like this. Just pursue your work and embrace it.
Yeah, definitely. I would say that like you don't need to, like, the thing about illustration is that it doesn't need to be nice looking. Like the point of illustration is to express yourself visually, you know, like all the mistakes and all the weird angles and bad hands, that's like part of your style. Whatever comes out of you is your style. Like it doesn't need to be super precious. So like if you want to be an artist and draw stuff, like do you know, no one's stopping you. So yeah, don't be discouraged by it. Like don't say I can't draw, because I don't believe that.
I love that. And also this kind of piggybacks off what you said earlier, is putting your work out there. So I have to say, when Lalani of the Distant Sea has these beautiful interior illustrations throughout, and when they were looking for an illustrator, the art director she said, you know, I can't really think of anyone that's really like clicking with me and how I'm envisioning the art. And so she said, I'm going to go on Instagram. And she went on Instagram and just looked at people's drawings. And like, this is the map. I mean, it's just, so you just never know who's out there and who's looking at your work. And so, you know, you kind of just have to put yourself out there. That's an important part of the whole process.
Cool. Yeah. And I was going to ask, you know, if there's anything, especially if you're, you know, for younger kids or teens who are, you know, looking at cartooning or you know, making comics. I think that's also really great advice. I don't know if you have any other tips for the younger ones out there, or maybe it's the same no matter how old you are.
Keep drawing, keep practicing and drawing.
I will say that's been my quarantine activity, is more art, and it's so peaceful and therapeutic in a lot of ways. Even if I can't, as they talked about hands, I cannot draw a hand, I cannot draw a face. So everybody's just faceless, but I can't
But
do
you know what? You could just invent a world where people have no hands or no faces.
right?
Problem solved. And then you can say, this is my world building.
Yeah, it's like a nightmare though. Like faceless people are one of my nightmares. I don't know why. Like in the Phantom Toll booth. Okay, so last question, unless there's any more from the audience. But again, people in the chat have been very appreciative of hearing these different experiences and backgrounds. So because this is, you know, an author event, a book event, I always have to ask if there are any reads or authors that you are really recommending to people right now, or any like recent favorites, or even anything coming out.
I've been obsessed with the Filipino zine community. There's 3 artists I would recommend off the bat. Carl Cervantes on Instagram makes the most heartbreaking zines and comics. He's based in the Philippines. His Instagram handle is Cerebral Epitaph. AJ Dungo's graphic novel In Waves, he's Filipino American, he's from California, wrote, I think, was my favorite book of 2019. And lastly, Andrew Lorenzi is a Filipino American cartoonist also, and he created a comic book called Multo, and it's just amazing. So I would recommend those 3 people. Sorry, they're all men. I'll think of more women.
And I'll have to say, shout out to poets. We were talking about poets earlier. So Barbara Jane Reyes is one of my favorite poets. She's a Filipina. And she has a collection coming out, I mean, a poetry collection this month. I can't remember what day it is, but it's Letters to a Young Brown Girl. So if you're full of feminist rage or rage in general, she's definitely a good poet for you to read. Yes, there it is. She is incredible. And also for young people, well, people of any age, really, I've been recommending this book a lot. It's A Wish in the Dark, and it's by Christina Newhard, and she's Thai American. And it's basically a retelling of Les Mis, but it's set in a Thai-inspired fantasy world. It's an incredible book. It's been getting lots of love, and I highly recommend it to all of you. It's technically middle grade, but you know, you can enjoy it at any age. It's very good.
It already came out, but I finished N.K. Jemisin's The City We Became recently, and that was just a brilliant, mind-bending book. And it's so much fun to watch her be interviewed as well about that. She's done a lot of interviews. And I'm also reading something kind of serious. So the How to Hide an Empire, I forget the author, but yeah, more nonfiction, serious history of colonialism sort of book.
Awesome. Okay. Yes, N.K. Jemisin's book was amazing. And it's so interesting because I believe it's a trilogy. So it'll be really interesting to see where that goes. And then I wanted to mention that somebody had asked Aileen about the Filipinx literary scene. So I put part of her answer inside the chat. Aileen, do you have anybody else that you are reading and really want to lift up right now?
We actually have several events coming up with Barbara Jane Reyes, Janet Stigman, and I'm going to post the link. There are just so many emerging and established Filipino American writers out there now coming out or with new book releases.
All right.
And yeah, so I wanted to take this opportunity to thank our special guests, Malaka Gharib, Erin Entrada Kelly, and Christina Newhard for joining us today. If you enjoyed our event, please support our featured authors by purchasing their books, with thanks to Books Inc. and Archipelago Books for their support. We've posted the bookstore links on the library and Facebook event page. And lastly, thank you Burlingame Library and Elaine for hosting our event. Oh, if you wish to support the library's programming, please visit the Burlingame Library Foundation for more information. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, all. And then also, please fill out the survey. We will link it in the chat, and it might also have popped out automatically for you. Somebody asked about saving the chat. I believe you have the ability, so down by where you would enter the chat, there's 3 dots, and you can hit Save Chat. I will also save it just in case any of our lovely speakers would like to see it. But yes, thank you so much again to all of you. This was really wonderful. Y'all are amazing. It's so great to actually talk to you. All right, bye everyone. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Okay, and I saved the chat, so no worries for those of you asking.
Everyone left. It's just the 3 of us now.
There's a few attendees. Email me at ty@plsinfo.org if you are interested in the chat. Okay, and I need to stop recording and stop the live stream.